وعلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله وعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله إن الحسين مصباح الهدى والسفينة النجاة. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this tawfiq to once again gather like this and begin the ayam of Azah and the dhikr of the shahadat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. On a personal note, it is an honor, it always is an honor for me to be here at Beit al-Qayem in New Jersey. This is my home now in the Northeast, whether you like it or not. And alhamdulillah, for me to spend these next 10 nights with all of you is my honor and my pride. I'd like to thank those who are responsible for making this happen and for allowing this haqir to be with you, inshallah, during these 10 days. Recite one salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. I do have a topic in mind across 10 nights, so we'll get to that topic tomorrow, inshallah. Today and tonight, as an introductory discussion on the adab and the etiquette and the istiqbal of Muharram, is an important discussion. It is vital that we enter these next 10 nights, at least these next few nights, in a proper mindset, with a purpose in mind, with a goal in mind, and understanding the ahmiyat and the adamat and the importance of these gatherings. I have a few points to make. Inshallah, you'll stay with me. The first point I wanted to make, and again, these are all reminders for all of you and myself, don't take this gathering lightly. This is our identity. Azadari is a source of our pride, is a source of our identity, is a source of our salvation, inshallah. We are nothing without this Azadari. With it, we can move mountains. With it, we allow the dushman and the enemy to tremble at their feet. From day number 1 up until now, they haven't quite figured out this nation called the Shia nation. These are people, they claim, who decorate their grief. And they're right. People who anticipate their sadness, prepare themselves and their children to enter these 10 very difficult, very emotionally driven, grief-stricken days. We are perhaps a nation like no other. We anticipate and celebrate these days. We prepare ourselves to come to these gatherings, and we wish to cry. We wish to shed tears. We actually have a suitcase sometimes at home, our sisters do, labeled Muharram clothes. We bring them out, we wash them, we iron them, we lay them out for us and our children. And if anybody outside of us would ever watch us do this, they would think that we are crazy. These are people who go to these gatherings and they hear these gruesome details of a gruesome shahadat of not one but several young men and women, and yet they run towards that majlis. They run towards that masjid. The thought of them being home and there's being a dhikr of Hussein somewhere in the city pulls them out of their home. If they're sick, if they're tired, they have exams, they have school tomorrow, it doesn't matter. This is a harara, as the Prophet says, inside of the qulub al-mu'min. It's a fire, it's a movement, it's a flame inside of us. He says that flame that exists inside the hearts of the mu'mineen will never extinguish. The enemy can try as hard as they want, pour as much dollars as they want to remove us from this azadari, but we are not going to go anywhere. As Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam says, can I ask all of you to come a little bit in the middle, if you don't mind, especially those who are by the exit, one foot in the hall, 1 foot out the hall, inshallah. Please come, if you don't mind, a little bit in the middle here, so there's a little bit of a fazan and a mahfil and a mahal for the environment, please. With one last salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Our 8th Imam says about these types of gatherings, He says, Man jalasa majlisan yuhya fihi amruna lam yamut qalbuhu yawma tamutul qulub. For the one who sits in a gathering, in a majlis, man jalasa, the one who sits in a gathering, where our affairs, us the Ahlul Bayt, are made alive, yuhya, from hay, made alive, meaning what? We're discussed, we're talked about, they cry for us. For the one who sits in a gathering like this, lam yamut qalbuhu, his heart will never die. Yawma tamutul qulub, on the day of judgment, where the hearts will die out of fear of Allah, the one who sits in this gathering will not fear a single thing whatsoever. The first point I want to make is that we are to take at least these next 10 nights very seriously. Now, alhamdulillah, all of you have your special, unique way of paying tribute to Abu Abdullah. Many of you don't wear certain colors in these next 10 nights. Some of you don't sleep on your mattress, you sleep on the floor. Some of you don't eat meat for 10 days, don't watch TV for 10 days. Don't, entertain yourself for 10 nights. If you and your family are sitting around and it seems to be a little bit of a festive mood, you try to kill that mood inside the home. And those are amazing tributes to Abu Abdullah. But I want to trigger a thought inside of you, if you don't mind. Many of you are from India, Pakistan. I've never seen it, I've heard in India, during these Ayam-e-Azha, the first 10 days, these big jaluses are organized, and in those jaluses, Muslims are there, and non-Muslims are there as well. I've heard that Hindus come out as well. So I want you to imagine now you have a Shia of Abu Abdullah, you have a Hindu beside him. The Shia is wearing black, the Hindu is wearing black. The Shia is barefoot, the Hindu is barefoot. The Shia is walking in the jalus, and so is the Hindu. The Shia is crying, so is the Hindu. The Shia is praying through the dhari of the alam, so is the Hindu. The Shia sleeves are rolled up, so are the Hindus. A few buttons undone, so are the Hindus. And at the end of the jalus, the Hindu goes home and the Shia goes home. Difference? No difference on the outside. The question I have for myself and for all of you, does Imam Hussein expect more from the Shia as opposed to the Hindu? He'll go back to his Hindu lifestyle at home, comes, pays tribute, sends his salams, sheds a few tears, has signs of grieving for Abu Abdullah. The Shia has the exact same signs, but the expectation from the Shia is far greater. And that expectation I want us to think about. What is it that Imam Hussein wants from us? Can we do more beyond what we do every single year for 10 nights? Can we pay tribute to him by getting closer to that very deen and that very Allah he gave his life for? And it begins with how we enter these gatherings. The adab and the etiquette of Muharram. I'm born and raised in Toronto. I come from a typical immigrant family. Parents are Pakistani. I was born in Toronto. My father, Marhum, was very strict about these gatherings. Everything from the clothes that I wore, to the candy or gum that I ate. If I tell you the things that he wouldn't allow, you'd be surprised. He would say that in the majlis of Imam Hussein, there are no jeans allowed. Didn't like t-shirts. He said nothing is to be in your mouth. No chewing, no popping, no sucking, nothing. He would check the bottom of the socks to make sure they're not dirty or they have holes in them. He would check to make sure that my face was washed, to make sure my hair was combed. He would even spray a little bit of cologne on me. He'd make sure that if I had a button shirt, it was tucked in and not flaring out. That was on the way to the majlis. When he entered, he would make sure I sat beside him. If for a moment that my legs were a little bit tired and I stretched out my legs, he'd look at those legs as if to say that if they don't go back where they belong in 10 seconds, there's going to be a problem. And they would go back in 9 seconds. If I had to go to the washroom in the middle of the majlis, he would say, hold it. If I say I can't hold it, he would say, go right there. It's okay, I'll clean it up afterwards. He wouldn't let me move. Now this is all during back then. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That was all back then. We had no English majalises, no good-looking English speakers from Toronto. We had old school Urdu majalis. Ulama who would start screaming from the khutbah until the masahib. And I was a 10-year-old kid, a 12-year-old kid. Didn't know a word of Urdu. And that's what I believe to be the etiquette of Muharram. And he told me that if it's true that these gatherings are not normal gatherings, if it's true that we have these hadiths like the one that I mentioned about from 8th Imam, as the level of the gathering increases, our preparation to enter those gatherings should also increase. Nowadays, mashallah, you see, and I'm not calling anybody out here, nor am I judging anybody here at all. Please forgive me if you sense that. But sometimes I see some of the fashion that our youth come, the way that they wear things, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they sit, as if they're on a recliner watching a football game. Buried in their phones, of course, chewing gum like it's the last gum on earth. Chew every piece of it out, inshallah. And the preparation that you have from your home until you get back to your home is all part of the parcel of the adab and the etiquette of Muharram. And we've lost that, I'm sorry. And I asked my parents, please prepare your child from home. They should be wearing the best of clothes in these majalises. They should come looking like the best, smelling the best, having the best clothes on. If that means that you buy a brand new pair of socks for the majalis of Imam Hussein, then so be it. It's just small things. But believe me, they have an impact. Because your child will ask you, why Baba, do I look different today as opposed to, let's say, in Ghadir or Mubahila or this or that? That's when you say, this is Hussein's majlis. There's a difference. That's point number one. Point number two, a complete and absolute majlis is from the hadith-e-kisa to the ziyarat. We believe as youth, and for the longest time, wallahi, I believed the same thing, that this whole setup that we have, that the Marsiya, So, Salam, for example, Majlis, Matam, Ziyad, was some cultural made-up thing from India, Pakistan. Believe me, it's not. It's the Sira of the Ahlul Bayt. It's the Sunnat of the Ahlul Bayt. The Imams of every door and every zaman and every time would call the poets that were very famous back then. Asked them to recite and to write a couplet and a few shares in Shairi about Imam Hussein. Would ask them to recite that shair and Shairi in front of them. If they didn't do it with riqqat and diqqat and grief and gham, they would stop them in the middle of that poetry and say, no, start again, as if my grandfather's mayyat was lying on the ground in front of you. And this person would come and would cite with the utmost grief. And those around him would cry. Here we start the Marsiya, and mashallah, there are 3 or 4 people here and that's it. We actually plan to leave the house when the Marsiya starts, mashallah. I urge you, I ask you, the Marsiya itself is one of the most beloved sunnah customs of the Ahlul Bayt. This idea of the reciting the poetry of the Gham of Ali and Muhammad was done by every Imam. In fact, every Prophet, I can challenge you, from Adam all the way down to our Holy Prophet. Every Prophet attended a majlis, every Imam attended a majlis. From Marsiya until all the way until Ziyarat. Please give it that due respect, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Point number 3 that I wanted to make was about grief. And I make this point because I can with all of you. I'm not new to all of you, nor are you new to me. You know where I come from. You know what my purpose is, hopefully by now. And this idea that now, this a little bit of takallufat between us, this idea of, formalities between us are no longer there. There are 2 groups that are forming right now when it comes to Azadari. And when it comes to specifically grieving for Abu Abdullah. And both of them concern me. The first group are, mashallah, the academics of the West. These young guys who are striving to be tomorrow's doctors and engineers and lawyers and cardiac surgeons, and I wish you nothing but the best and success in it. The problem is sometimes that the academia institution blinds your emotion. And you begin to question, why is it that this barbaric act, this is the word they use sometimes, of us crying for Imam Hussein, slapping our chest, and then going home every single night. Doesn't make sense to them. Not everybody, some of them. And this is from personal experience. They come to people like me and they ask me that on Shabi Ashur, you always mention that Imam Hussein in his khayma, in his tent, would sit there and do a night of dhikr of Allah, worship of Allah, to the point where they said it sounded like bees buzzing, the hadith says. That's how in tune they were, the entire army of Imam Hussein. And they would say that yet what we do on Shabi Ashur is we go from idara to center, a little bit of matam here, a little bit of salam here, a little bit of rona here, and that's all we do. Why don't we also remove the grief from this, see Imam Hussein as academia, and worship Allah on Shabi Ashur? Why is it that all we do as Shias is that we cry? Even when it comes to the new year, we ring in that new year draped in black and crying. That's a concern for me, should be a concern for all of you as well. The other concern is that they reduce Azadari and Imam Hussein to nothing but tears. And they've convinced themselves, either because they want that easy path, or they've been told by somebody on this minbar and anybody else, that so long as you cry for Imam Hussein, your palace in Jannat is waiting for you. Your boarding pass for a one-way flight to Jannat has already been printed. So all you need to do for 10 days out of 365, sometimes even 3 days, sometimes even one afternoon, come, shed a few tears, legitimate tears. Build that palace for you in Jannah, then for 364 days out there, you can do whatever you want. You are Husayni after all. Jannat is prescribed on your forehead. And these two extremes, if I can use that word, are a concern. Neither one is correct. On one side, the amount of ahadith that we have, and sahih, mu'tabar, strong traditions that talk about the adamat of one tear. Not any tear, one tear of Aba Abdullah. Enough to wipe out those sins of past and present, of big and small, of those that are forgotten and those that are remembered. In fact, we have a hadith that says the size of the wing of a mosquito. And all of you have heard these traditions every single year. We have traditions that talk about how Allah will collect these tears of Aba Abdullah that have been shed in this world. And He will gather them on the Day of Judgment, and He will use them for a certain purpose. And let me share with you what that purpose is. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You have to excuse me a little bit. Alhamdulillah, this year I had the honor of going to Hajj for the very first time. And those of you who have been to Hajj, you know that unless you come back with a cough, your Hajj is not qabul. Alhamdulillah, I'm coughing, mashallah. So I'm doing my best to control myself right now so that I don't cough. But if I do, you'll bear with me, inshallah. I have plenty of halls. I don't need 40 packs of halls coming my way. Thank you very much. I have plenty of that, inshallah. But please bear with me, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The hadith says this, and this is beautiful. Those of you who challenge and wish to remove the grief of Aba Abdullah. They say there are some individuals who will have to spend some time in the hellfire to repent for their sins, to repay Allah for their sins, and after that they end up in heaven. It's possible. The grave won't clean you, barzakh may not clean you. A little bit of the hellfire may do the trick to make sure you are not worthy of Jannat. Inshallah, that's not all of you. They say that, and this is a picture that is painted in traditions, that there will be those who will go directly to heaven from barzakh, There will be those who will stop in heaven a little bit, like I said, cleanse themselves, clean themselves up, scrub the dirt off of their soul, and enter heaven. They say that when those who stopped off in hell to enter heaven, the effects of the hellfire will be very visible on them. And the ones who went directly to heaven could tell that those group that just walked in just now, that group was just in the hellfire and now they've entered the heaven. They might have some scars, they might have some burns, who knows? And it could be possible that even in heaven, those who were the direct heaven individuals, they might question, I wonder what this guy or that guy or this sister did, where she had to spend a few days in hell and then enter heaven. They might even do a little bit of a nudge. Look at him, look at her, look at him, look at her. Allah now is obsessed with protecting our dignity. The hadith says that before they enter Jannah, those who were in the hellfire first, Allah takes them to a pond called Hayawan, the hadith says. Not Haywan. Haywan is animal. Hayawan means pure life, comes from Hay. He will take them from the hellfire to this pond. This pond will be used to clean them up, as if they never spent time in the hellfire. They'll enter the heaven to the point where they will be exactly like those who came directly into heaven. No discussion, no questions, no nudging, nothing. All this to protect their dignity. Now that pond that's being taken by Allah to that pond to clean them up is a collection of the tears in this dunya shed for Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. And you want to remove those tears from this gham? Or reduce this tear to a certain language? It's enough. Sometimes the name Husayn is enough and the heart begins to flutter and shake. These tears have immense importance. These tears have value. If we have nothing else to present on the day of judgment to Allah or to Sayyidah Fatima, we can present our tears to her. And we can say that with the softest of hearts, I shed tears for your son, Sayyidah Fatima. We have hadith that says not only the one who cries, but the one who makes those who cry, they have an ajr azim waiting for them in the hereafter. To the point where if tears don't come, sometimes people can't cry. They say to even make a face. Put your head down, make a frown, make your eyebrows down, get those wrinkles on your forehead. Force a little bit of the grieving face. At least put your head down when masa'ib is going on. All adab and etiquette of Muharram that our parents taught us. It all comes from traditions. So please, if you're anybody who either thinks this way or has a friend of yours who likes to strip the gham and the grief from this azadari, I ask you to rethink this. If Imam Sajjad did one thing for 33 years after Ashura, he made sure that nobody forgot the gham of Imam Hussain. To the point where his close ashab would say, Kab tak roenge ab Mawla? It's been decades after Ashura. But his point was that every khushi, every gham, he made sure that his father was remembered. Now the other side of the equation are those people who believe, and I don't think that this is now a growing movement. I really believe it. I was talking to my host this afternoon about this. This awareness, this insight that we have towards Azadari, I think in the past 10 years is truly changing. Not only within our youth, within our elders. The sacrifices that our elders have made to adopt now a little bit of the Western style of Azadari. Be it the fact that you accept someone like me in this language to come and speak for you for these first 10 days, which are very important to some of you. You look forward every single year to these 10 nights. And now you're stuck with someone like me in this ajib and strange language. And somehow, though you're here, and this love, this harara I talked about, brings you here. At the same time, however, it doesn't mean that because we simply do shirkat and shed a few tears, that there's a palace waiting for us in Jannat. Let's be careful. Now this is now the crux of the discussion. On one side you'll tell me that Sayyid, the hadith is sahih. You just said to me, the hadith is sahih. One tear will forgive all your sins. So how can we reconcile this idea? If I'm claiming that simply crying for Imam Hussein won't be enough for Jannah, the hadith says something else. Is there a gap? Let's try to fill that gap. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this might be a little bit of a mundane discussion for some of my youth, but I think it's vital that we establish that from the very first day. Tomorrow we begin our topic, inshallah. You see, we have in the world of hadith, and some of you who have studied a little bit of ilm hadith, you know that we as the maktaba and the madhab of Shia Islam do not believe that we have sahih books. We have some classical works when it comes to traditions, hadith. Kafi and Bahar and Wasal al-Shia and Man la yahdharu faqin, all these are great works by some of our Azim scholars, like Sheikh Kulaini and Sheikh Suduq and Hur Amuli. But nowhere do we claim the entire book is sahih, meaning everything in that book is 100% accurate. Unlike our Sunni brothers who believe that Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari. We believe we have to research every hadith one by one. And the research of that hadith is on 3 different components. One is Rijal, the chain of narrators, making sure the people who are reporting hadith are mu'tabar and sahih. Number 2 is the context and the circumstance under which the hadith was mentioned. And number 3 is its conformity to the Quran itself. The same hadith by the Ahlul Bayt say what? That if you come across a hadith that claims to be by us, and it does not conform with the wisdom and the philosophy of the Quran, throw it out. It's not from us. Or in one hadith it says throw it against the wall, meaning what? Reject it completely. It's impossible the Ahlul Bayt say one thing and the contradiction of the Quran says another. It's not possible that the Ahlul Bayt say something completely opposite from the Quran. So now let's examine this hadith about the size of a wing of a mosquito and who the Ahl Jannah are inside the Quran. Can we come to some conclusion? We can. As I ask you for salawat, I also ask for those who are by the exit to please come a little bit towards my right, inshallah. With one last salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let's say one more love salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We know enough to know that the way the Quran describes those who are the Ahl Jannah have certain characteristics. I just want to share a few for you tonight. And these are some of the goals that we should be looking to set for ourselves the next 10 nights. And I ask you, set a goal for yourself. What do I want to accomplish in these next 10 nights? Not wearing red, for example. Not sleeping on the bed, for example. Those are all there, and those are beautiful in their own right. Adding on top of that, not replacing it, adding on top of that, could be, I'm saying could be. For example, I won't miss one Fajr from now until Ashura. It could be that I'm going to recite 10 verses of the Quran every single day from now until Ashura. It could be that Ziyarati Ashura, if you do it, alhamdulillah, every single day on the exact same time, if possible, from now until Ashura only. And do it in the name of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. You'll watch, things will change. Now come to the Quran. The Quran talks about 3 or 4 or 5 different characteristics of the Ahl Jannah. We're trying to reconcile the hadith that says, one tear of Imam Hussein wipes out all of your sins, even those that you're going to commit, the hadith says. And hours of crying is not needed. One tear that rolls down the cheek is enough, the hadith says. If I claim that that's not enough for Jannah, then what is it that this hadith is about? I want to come to that conclusion and then Masayib, inshallah. Let's examine 2 verses of the Quran. We know enough to know that Iman and Amal al-Salih is everywhere in the Quran. And those are the avenues of what? Of success for a mu'min. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. The mu'min will be successful. The word qad that comes before a fi'l muzari, a present or a future tense verb, means yaqinan, hatmi, for sure, there's no doubt about it. The successful one will be the mu'min. Now let's define what a mu'min is in the Quran. The same Quran says in Surah Ma'idah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, the mu'mineen, not everybody, the mu'mineen. Ittaqullaha wabtaghul ilayhi al-wasilata وَجَاهِدُوا فِي سَبِيلِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. If you want to be amongst the successful ones, 3 categories or 3 ingredients: taqwa, wasila, jihad. Jihad is struggle. Wasila means getting to Allah through a different source as opposed to directly through Him. And taqwa, piety, being a muttaqi individual. So success always means a success that means ukhravi in the akhirat. So we know that iman, amal salih has to be there. Okay? Number 2, Surah Nisa, number 13, says, وَمَنْ يُطِيَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ الْجَنَّاتِ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا وَذَلِكَ الْفَوْضُ الْعَظِيمُ. The one who does ata'at of Allah and His Rasul, he will be placed inside Jannah, where beneath gardens rivers flow. And this is fawdhun azim, the Quran says. This is a great achievement. So ata'at of Allah and the Prophet, complete submission of Allah and the Prophet, is a requirement to enter Jannah. Number 3, Surah Ma'idah, ayat number 119. قال الله هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك الفوض العظيم. Again, the ones who will enter heaven. This says, قال الله, Allah will say when? On this day, هذا يوم. On which day? The day of judgment. On this day, the ones that will benefit are the sadiqeen, are the ones who use this tongue to profess nothing but the truth. Their truth, their sidq will be their benefit, such that they'll be inside heaven. Of course, where there'll be gardens, rivers beneath flow. Fiha abadan, forever they'll be there. In such a case, where radiyallahu anhum, wa radu anhu, they're pleased with Allah, Allah's pleased with them. And again, ذَلِكَ الْفَوْضُ الْعَظِيمُ, it's a great achievement. Okay? And here it talks about what? The one who's sadiq. So yes, we cry for Imam Hussein, but we let our tongue loose. We cry for Imam Hussein, but we question Allah's existence. We cry for Imam Hussein, there's no iman or taqwa, amal salih. We cry for Imam Hussein, and ghibat and backbiting and slander. When the hadith talks about the idea that one tear will forgive all these sins, it says that the gham of Imam Hussein should be a trigger for you to adopt those characteristics the Quran mentions for the Ahl Jannah. There should be wings for you to fly to those tools needed for Jannah. Why? Because tears are a sure sign of a soft heart. Of a soft heart. You know, the example I've often given is Play-Doh. Play-Doh. Those of you who are small kids, you know, that one reoccurring expense every month is Play-Doh inside your homes. And as long as that Play-Doh is soft, the Play-Doh is being used to mold. And you watch these kids in front of you, they mold things. Sometimes they make food, sometimes they make buildings, sometimes they make cars, sometimes they make faces. So long as the Play-Doh is soft, you can do whatever you want with it. The moment it becomes useless is when it becomes hard. Now cheap parents like me will run it under the water and say, come on, become soft again. Doesn't work. You throw it out, and you spend $1 and you buy a pack of Play-Doh. So long as it's soft, it's moldable towards however you want it to be. The moment a tear of Imam Hussein rolls down your face, it's an announcement by the heart that I haven't hardened yet. The sins that you've committed with me has not caused me to become a rock-hard heart like we have in the Quran. Hadith says by Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. He says that sometimes individuals cannot create the grief out of the fear of Allah. Why? Because their heart has hardened. And their heart has hardened because of the excessive amount of sin that they commit. Sins increase, the heart hardens. The heart hardens, there's no grief coming out of it. You come and you sit in a mahfal of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, you hear the musibah of Imam Hussein and his ashab and his family, and tears roll down your face. Right away, your heart is like Play-Doh. The ulama say the moment that you have that heart that's softened, now it's up to you to mold it and change it to a form that's different than pre-Muharram. God forbid that next Sunday when Ashura comes and goes, the Monday after when the 11th of Muharram happens and this hall is half empty, we go back to our pre-Muharram life. And this opportunity of 10 days of the constant softening of our hearts has come, has gone, and we haven't benefited whatsoever. The heart is screaming at us sometimes to say, look, I'm showing you signs that I want to be transformed and changed. I want you to grab me and clean me and shake me and mold me to go towards my Allah. So tears are very important. They're a sign of the softening of the hearts. It's important that we allow ourselves to grieve. Now the one point I want to make before we enter Masa'ib, it's already been 40 minutes, are to my elders. I know some of you are used to Urdu Masa'ib. And from now I'd like to apologize, I can't recite Urdu Masa'ib. I barely know enough Urdu to have a 2-minute conversation with all of you. If I recite Urdu Masa'ib, you won't cry for Imam Hussein, you'll cry for my Masa'ib. Believe me, you will. But what I do want you to think about a little bit, and it's a lot I'm asking you, and so far you've been very cooperative with me. The amount of himmat of that all of you have given me whenever I'm here is amazing. I ask you to give me a little bit more of that. Perhaps maybe what might make us cry if we don't quite get the same feeling, and I understand, as difficult as it is sometimes to hear English Masa'ib, it's even that much more difficult to recite English Masa'ib. English is a very weak language. I said that as an English speaker, by the way. It's a very weak language. The dard, the emotion that Farsi, Arabi, Urdu have, English doesn't have. The alfaz that they have sometimes, it hits the heart, English doesn't have. But when you see an 8-year-old child beside you, maybe for the first time, cry for Ali Asghar. Maybe for the first time you see a 16-year-old who now for the first time actually understands why Hazrat Abbas lost both his arms. Maybe you'll begin to look at him and think, maybe this will help me break my heart in pieces and cry. That maybe for decades and decades I've had my share of grief for Imam Hussein. Now let's allow these kids who don't quite make that connection yet to make that connection. Let them hear the musibah in the language that they might understand. Now in between I'll throw in a few Urdu words for your benefit, but believe me, let's not limit the gham of Hussein to a language. The name of Hussein is enough, is it not? The name of Ali Akbar is enough, is it not? You hear Sakina and your heart breaks. You hear Abbas and your heart breaks. You hear Qasim and your heart breaks. You hear Zainab and your heart breaks. It could be in French, it could be in German, it could be in English. And this is, I really believe this is the miracle nature of this Azadari. After a while, if you've gone through a tragedy in your life, you've lost a father, a child, a wife, a spouse, a husband, in the most tragic way, and people ask you years later, but what happened to your husband? And you tell them about the very difficult battle with cancer, for example. And for the first time after many, many years, you can actually tell them the entire story without breaking down. Because time now has passed. But this musibah is different. Everybody knows exactly what musibah will be recited on what date. Everybody maybe even has more details of that musibah than I do. Everybody knows sometimes before I even mention the next portion of the musibah, you already know what's going to come out of my mouth. But you cry and you shake and you tremble like it's the first time you're hearing it. And not just now, 1400 years from now. And 1400 years ago, the same effect will happen. We cry for Hussein all throughout the year, do we not? In every big event, from the Bandar Shaban to Eid al-Fitr to Shab Qadr, there's a dhikr of Imam Hussein. There's a khas ziyad for Imam Hussein. But these 10 nights are different. We come prepared to cry. We come asking to cry. We get upset if the alim doesn't recite proper masa'ib. And this might be second nature to some of you. It's not to a lot of us. A lot of us don't quite understand this movement. That who truly wants to hear the gruesome details of a body being trampled, of a 6-month-old begging for water and an arrow striking him in the neck? We look at the images out of Burma, the images out of Iraq and Afghanistan. After all, we can't look at those images anymore. We ask people, don't send me these videos. I don't want to hear about what's happening with the Rohingya Muslims, let's say, in Burma right now. But for Imam Hussein, the maqtal of Imam Hussein, Asr Ashur, that very difficult maqtal, what Shima did to our Mawla, we want to hear it. We look forward to hearing it, not in a way that we celebrate, but we want our heart to break and shatter for Imam Hussein. This is not short of a miracle. This is not something that we need to ponder on. We talk about the hadith that talks about not only the humans cry, the jinns cry for Hussein. The angels cry for Hussein. The fish in the sea, hadith says, cry for Hussein. The animals in the mountains cry for Hussein. The people of the sky cry for Hussein. The people of the ground cry for Hussein. And for every prophet that came, one thing that Jibreel had to do, he came and he would recite the musibat of Hussein with every single prophet. He sat down Adam and said, Adam, listen to Hussein's musibat. He came to Nuh on his kashti, on his boat, listen to the musibat of Hussein. He came to Ibrahim, listen to the musibat of Abu Abdullah. He went to Musa, listen to the musibat of Abu Abdullah. And then perhaps the most difficult time was when he came to Rasulullah on the 3rd of Sha'ban, holding his precious Hussein. Holding his precious Hussein. And for the first time, there's a smile on the face of Rasulullah. His grandson is in his arms. My grandfather's in the audience, you know. The birth of your own son is one thing, the birth of the son of your son is something else. He's holding Fatima's son. There's a glow, there's a radiance coming from, there's a nur coming from Imam Hussein. And it's almost as if Jibreel is looking, how do I tell this grandfather what this Hussein will go through? He begins to cry, the hadith says Jibreel does. Rasulullah says, Jibreel, it's a day of celebration for me and my family. Why do you cry? He sits down Rasulullah and tells him, this grandson of yours on the plains of Karbala, 3 days hungry and thirsty, will be beheaded. The Holy Prophet begins to cry. Imam Ali sees those same tears. Sayyidah Fatima sees those same tears. She says, Baba, it's the birth of our son. It's a day of happiness. Why do you cry? Now that same struggle that Jibreel went through, Rasulullah now goes through. How do I tell my daughter that this son has to go through what he went through? He sits down Fatima Zahra and tells her exactly what will happen to Hussein on the day of Karbala, on the day of Ashura. Bibi Fatima begins to ask Rasulullah questions. Says, Baba, when my Hussein will go through this on the day of Ashura, will you be there, Baba? I won't be there. Will Abu Hassan be there? I won't be there. Will his brother Hassan be there? Will I be there? Nobody will be there. And then she says, who will cry for my Hussein? And that's when very famously all of you heard an absolute sahih tradition that a nation will be born where the men will cry for the men of Hussein. The women will cry for the women of Hussein. The children will cry for the children of Hussein. And that nation from that day until now has been here every single year, sitting on this farsh, crying for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Imam Hussein's journey begins from Medina. Leaving Medina was very difficult for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. This was the city of his grandfather. This was his home city. He found peace and tranquility in Medina. But when he realized that he had to leave Medina, he made 2 stops. One to the grave of Rasulullah, one to the grave of his mother Fatima Zahra. And the way Imam Hussein was for each grave was very different. They say that when Imam Hussein walked towards the grave of Rasulullah, he walked like a determined man. A man on a mission, a soldier in an army. He lied down on the grave of Rasulullah. They say he put his right cheek on the grave of Rasulullah, that Nana, I'm leaving Medina now. I'm going to save your deen, Nana. But when he went to the grave of his mother, it was different. They say Imam Hussein went stumbling towards the grave of his mother. And the only example I can give, my mother's in the audience, is that when you have small kids at home and you've been out of the house for many, many hours, and that front door opens and you walk in, and for the first time after many hours, that child lays their eyes on you, they run so fast, they walk so fast, they trip, they stumble, but they can't get to you fast enough. Why? They want to feel the warmth of your lap and your arms. All they want is for you to carry them and hold them and hug them and kiss them and tell them that how difficult it was without you for many, many hours. Hussein stumbled towards the grave of Fatima Zahra, collapsed on the grave. Amma, I'm leaving Medina now. You're not with me. Baba's not with me. Hassan isn't with me. If you could, I would ask you, take me in the grave with you. Hold me and comfort me. The only other time we saw Imam Hussein stumble like this, on the day of Ashura. Ali Akbar comes to him and says, Baba, give me ijazah. All of the ashab are gone. I want to be the first from the Bani Hashim. Imam Hussein gives him ijazah, mounts him on the horse. Ali Akbar begins to ride inside the Maidan. He says that I felt like there was somebody who was following me. He stops his horse, looks behind him, a 57-year-old father stumbling towards the horse. Ali Akbar picks up his father, says, Baba, you gave me ijazah. Hey Ali Akbar, if only you were sahib awlad, if only you were a son like I have in you, you would know how difficult this is. Imam Hussein gets the qafla ready. One by one, all the women come out, and their respective sons and mahramat come and mount them on the camel. When all the women were done, the announcement is made that for all the men to lower their gaze, the daughter of Fatima is coming out of her home. Zainab comes out. Imam Hussein for her istiqbal comes forward. Abul Fazl Abbas is kneeled down on the ground. Ali Akbar has his arms. Hussein is standing beside Zainab. An entire group of the Bani Hashim there to mount this one Zainab on the camel. How much azim, how much respect, how much love, how grand is Zainab that all these young, beautiful faces of the Bani Hashim are there to mount her on the horse. But Zainab's heart on the 10th of Muharram, for sure, remember that day in Rajab when everybody was there. This is now Ashura, that was Medina, this is Karbala. One by one they're all gone. When the qafla was ready to move towards Sham, Kulthum is standing there, Zainab is standing there. Zainab says, Kulthum, let me mount you on the camel. She mounts her on the camel, and the daughter of Fatima stands there there by herself on the plains of Karbala. My heart tells me that she remembers that day when Ali Akbar was there, Muhammad were there, Qasim was there, Hussein himself was there. But this is Asri Ashur. There's nobody there. The books say that it wasn't Muhammad, it wasn't Hussein, Ali Akbar or Qasim. She went to the banks of Furat and said, Abbas, look at your Zainab. I never thought a day would come that I have a brother like you, and I stand here by myself. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلبين ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم حسين.